Well, thanks for joining us today on the Big Blue Podcast. I'm Greg Stone, Metro Campus Provost, here with Dr. Lee Goodson, our President and CEO. Hello, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you, Greg?
I'm really well, and we're here at the C4C at Metro, as always.
Yeah.
And
It's a beautiful fall day.
It is a great fall day, along with John Niemeyer, who, from time to time, we feel the need to remind people that John Niemeyer's here.
Yeah, he's
doing our
muscle
production,
behind it.
taking care of everything for us. We're also here with our guest today, and that is Pat Green, Dean of the School of, and I've just finally stopped myself from using the old name, Pat, School of Engineering, Aviation, and Public Service. So welcome. Thanks for taking some time to come in and chat about what's going on in EAPS, or however we want to
Is
say
that
it.
what you
We
call
can call
yourselves?
it. We can call it EAPS. Happy to be here. Yeah.
Having an EAPS holiday party this year?
EAPS holiday party.
Yeah, okay.
Which is, as we just mentioned, was part of additional reorganization. I almost hate to use the word reorganization, but a little bit of one this last year, including child development and human services and a few areas that had been elsewhere, putting them in a new school, giving it a new name. Pat, maybe just give us a sense of what was behind the moves, why we decided to make those moves, and remind us of what departments and programs now report up in your school.
Sure. So I'll kind of run down the list of departments and programs first, so we may eat up all of our 15 minutes. It's we have the engineering transfer degrees, engineering technology, the workforce degree. We have drafting and design engineering, electronics, aviation, which includes both a professional pilot and air traffic control, paramedic and EMT, our firefighter programs, both the degree and the academy, human services, criminal justice, and child development.
That's a lot.
Are in there.
That is a lot.
So it is, but it fits better than you might think. Especially, there's a big move in fire and emergency medical services and paramedic and within criminal justice to include more things that are related to human services and that you might find in child development and family service type degrees when you think about community policing. And there's a lot more mental health involved in those professions than there used to be. And
and I can only assume that's going to just continue to grow.
Exactly. There's a lot more opportunity for them to work together now than there has been in the past.
And most of your programs, although not all, are based at the Northeast Campus, right? Obviously, child development at West Campus, aviation's at Jones Riverside, but most everything else, if I'm remembering correctly, is at Northeast. So again, it's a good fit to have all that together.
Exactly.
So talk to us about some of the benefits. It's a very diverse group of disciplines that's within the school. What kind of synergies have you discovered that you maybe people wouldn't think of or you didn't think of at the beginning?
Right. I think there's a lot more to be found than a lot of people would think. I think, like most things, diversity makes the group stronger. And there's a lot of, like I mentioned with paramedic, EMT, firefighter, and criminal justice, there's a lot of good overlap with human services now to take mental health awareness courses and things. Our paramedic students and our fire students get to go to the Child Development Center a couple times a year to assess children and work with the children and talk with them, which is great. Gives them a great opportunity.
That is a great opportunity.
A big piece of our manufacturing curriculum is safety. It's very important on the job around high performance machinery to be safe, and all of our students get their OSHA 30 card, and as part of that they do basic life support, so CPR. And that is taught by our paramedic students. So they take a day of class to come in and teach that. So they get to be the teacher for a day. And it's a good synergy between two programs that you wouldn't think would have anything in common.
Mm-hmm.
And no doubt, as we get more into the life of this structure of the school, more of those kinds of opportunities are going to come up, no doubt.
Exactly.
Yeah. You're in the process of hiring an associate dean. We have associate deans already in liberal arts and communication and science and math. Dr. Quincy Wilson, Dr. Connie Hebert. What responsibilities will the associate dean in engineering, aviation, and public service have?
Right. This could be a very unique associate dean. This position is going to, most of their work will be focused in the child development area. So what I'm looking for really is someone with a lot of experience in child development. So people may not know that our child development program also has a fully fledged child development center in it. And this person will supervise the Child Development Center staff. They will supervise the 2 scholarship programs that we have, Bridging the Gap and a Regents-funded scholarship. They'll supervise professional staff in paramedic and aviation. And then they'll be responsible for hiring a program director for the Birth Through 8 Strategy for Tulsa program, which is another George Kaiser Family Foundation funded program that'll run out of our department.
Yeah, a lot of community-wide support for the best strategy that,
Yes.
that we're looking to have some participation in. What's your timeline, do you think, for having an associate dean?
Hoping January. We're getting down to the wire. We feel really good about. Had a small but really strong pool.
Oh, that's great.
And
Nice.
feel really
Good.
good
Oh, I
about
love
it.
that story. Yeah, hiring people is so critical
Yep.
to everything we're
It
doing
sets the
here.
tone for everything.
It absolutely does. Well, I'm Lee Goodson here with my co-host, Dr. Greg Stone, and you're listening to the Big Blue Podcast. Our guest today is Mr. Patrick Green, and we have been talking about the vision of the School of Engineering, Aviation, and Public Service and its new initiatives. And I just want to pause here for a second. And I call you Patrick all the time, and most other people call you Pat, right?
That's correct.
Right. And so one time, just a funny story for the listeners, you said, well, I feel right at home because that's what my mother calls me too.
Yeah, my mom would prefer that everyone call me Patrick.
Okay, well, I want to be in compliance with all mothers across the world because they're really important. And so, anyway, talk to us about what kinds of things are coming for the School of EAPS. And are there any new programs or initiatives coming in the next year or two? Are you going to be focused on your new structure and your new AD? What's up?
We will be focused on new structure and new AD, but that doesn't mean we're not going to have new initiatives. We had 2 faculty just accepted maybe 2 weeks ago into an NSF Mentor Connect program. So they will have travel and professional development funded over the next 10 months by the National Science Foundation to develop an ATE grant. And that grant will hopefully help us develop some new curriculum and buy new equipment to take our manufacturing curriculum more in the way of automation and robotics, which we all know manufacturing is becoming more and more automated. More jobs are being turned over to robots. So we want our students to be able to work on those robots and have jobs that survive that. So we've written a grant that first round is the faculty are accepted to this, and the second round is they actually get the grant. So that's happening in the next year. We have
That's exciting.
very exciting. It is wasn't necessarily expecting that we would get 2 faculty accepted, but it's great that they have
That's
the
really
next
great.
10 months some really intense mentorship from the National Science Foundation on workforce curriculum, which is not really something they work on a lot.
So do you get to interact with Pete Selden quite a bit in your role?
Yes. Yeah, we always want to make sure we work with that office. We don't want to go chase a rabbit. You know,
Right.
and Pete has his thumb on the pulse in Tulsa, so
He sure does.
he lets us know.
Yeah, that's great.
So Pat, before we start to wrap up, talk to us about how students from engineering, aviation, public service departments and programs, how they're impacting the local community. I mean, just because I'm working with nursing and allied health, I tend to think about those programs when I'm talking to folks about workforce. But
Right.
obviously, and you don't just have workforce programs, you do have some transfer programs too. But
Right.
what's the direct impact our students, our graduates are making on the community?
They're making a lot of direct impact in the way of employment and salaries, for sure. Our drafting program, the single greatest problem we have in drafting and design engineering is getting students to stay with us. Employers scoop them up pretty quickly at an average of $25 to $30 an hour right when they leave the college, which is a great salary for a 2-year degree. We have, an aviation program where we have a pipeline to SkyWest and to Envoy Air for our pilots, our air traffic controls. We have, good ends with the academy there in Norman for air traffic controllers. But really the impacts are, you can kind of go down the list. So we have engineering students that are out there solving problems. I met a transfer student last week who works at the Corps of Engineers. I just happened to be talking to someone at the Christmas tree lot that turned out to be an engineer from OSU who had started with us and is working for the Corps of Engineers solving flooding problems out there in the world. We have firefighters and paramedics and EMTs who are out there saving lives right now. We have criminal justice graduates who are cruising around town in police cars, helping keep us safe. We know in this town, more than anywhere else maybe, the value of early childhood and child development. We have graduates all over town at every EduCare center, at every CAP center in Tulsa, working to make sure that from 0 to the age of 3, students are getting the best education they can get, right? They're hearing as many words as possible and getting exposed to literacy at a young age. We have mental health services and addiction services in our human services programs where students can earn certificates and go straight to work. I'm lucky to work in a department where it's very easy to see the impact that the students are making
It really
on
is.
the community.
When you
Right.
walk through that, it's eye-opening. Yeah.
It is. I tell faculty all the time, it's easy to be cynical about what we're doing, but I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that when we change a student's life, it makes Tulsa better, which by extension makes Oklahoma better, and by extension makes our country and the world. But I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that it is changing the world.
Pretty easy to connect those dots.
Very easy, and it makes it easy to come into work.
Yeah. So before we ask the big question, I'm thinking about the acronym EAPS. And I said EAPS. And I got to say, when it came out of my mouth, I thought of Peeps. You know, like those Easter bunny,
sure.
those Easter bunny marshmallow candies, right? And so I don't know what you're going to do about your brand, but you probably want to talk to Carrie Schultz about that and the whole EAPS deal because it reminded me of Peeps. Okay.
The name came faster than we were ready for it. It did. The acronym and the name came faster than we were ready.
Yeah. Or you can play on it somehow. I
Right.
don't know. Yeah, somehow. Anyway, okay. Patrick, if you could go back to your 18-year-old self, this is our big question. We
Okay.
ask everybody this. One of these days, we're going to play a radio show where only this question is answered. We keep talking about that. But anyway, if you could go back and give advice to your 18-year-old self, what would that be?
Yeah, I have thought probably more than I should have about that question. I had a teacher in high school who is well known in the Tulsa area named Frank Cooper. And he would tell his students every day that the joy of life is in the journey. And it just kind of goes in one ear and out the other when you're in high
Right,
school.
of
And
course.
now that I'm older and have children and a family and all those kind of things, I think about it a lot more. And I would probably go back and hammer that message in because I raced through college and raced through grad school young, and graduated early and didn't really stop and smell the roses on all that kind of thing. And I think that I would tell myself to savor it a little bit more.
Be present in the moment.
Yes.
Yeah, that's so hard to do.
Very hard to do.
And it's so hard for people age 13, 14 through 22 to think that way, right? Because we're waiting on something at that point. We're waiting to arrive. So anyway, well, that's great advice.
And with that, you've been listening to the Big Blue Podcast. We want to thank our guest, Pat Green, for spending some time with us today, and thank you all for listening as well. Remember, you can find the Big Blue Podcast each week in the week at TCC and on the Creativity channel at YouTube. Dr. Goodson, thank you so much. Have a good weekend.
I will have a good weekend.
Thanks, Pat, and we will see you next time.
Thank you.
Have a good weekend.